I never imagined my life would spiral into something so complicated. I used to believe in boundaries, clear ones. I used to think marriage came with an invisible wall of respect and understanding. But that belief started to crack the night everything changed. My name is Rachel, and this is the story of how my husband's silence changed how I viewed him forever. I met David when I was 30, divorced, and a little disillusioned about love. David was kind, composed, and calm, the sort of man who made me feel safe. He had a teenage son from a previous marriage, Tyler, who lived with his mother most of the year but spent summers and holidays with us. When David and I married, Tyler was 15. I tried to bond with him over time, and while he was polite, he was also quiet and observant. He had David's stillness, but with eyes that saw more than they let on. At first, our household settled into an almost dreamlike routine. Mornings were full of coffee, newspapers, and breakfast. Evenings were spent around the TV or outside under the stars. David was a wonderful provider and we got along well. But as time passed, I started noticing a shift. It was subtle. David became less present, more into his books and work. He stopped noticing the little things like when I got my hair done or wore a new dress. I tried to talk to him, but he'd only nod, say he was tired, and bury himself in silence. Tyler, on the other hand, started becoming more aware of me, or at least that's how it felt. He was 17 by then and had grown taller than his dad. He would help around the house, offer to carry groceries or help me fix things. First, I appreciated the help. But soon, the way he looked at me began to feel different. I told myself it was in my head, that I was imagining things, that it was just a phase teenagers go through. Then one afternoon, something happened that I couldn't ignore. It was a Saturday in late June. David was in the backyard reading. I was in the kitchen preparing lemonade. Tyler had just come back from basketball practice, sweaty and shirtless, walking through the hallway. I turned to grab a towel and without warning, he was right behind me, breathing heavier than usual. I turned quickly, surprised, and he froze. "Sorry," he mumbled. "Didn't mean to startle you." I handed him the towel. Our hands brushed, just a second too long. From the corner of my eye, I saw David glance inside through the glass door. He looked right at us and I tensed. But he didn't say anything. He just turned back to his book. I tried to shake it off. Maybe I was making a big deal out of nothing. Maybe he trusted me too much to even consider there could be anything odd going on. But from that day forward, the tension began to rise. Tyler became bolder. He'd stay up late, watching movies on the couch with me when David went to bed early. He'd sit closer than necessary. His comments, while still respectful, started to carry undertones that made me nervous. And all the while, David remained silent. I finally brought it up one night after dinner. "I think Tyler's been acting strange," I said gently. David shrugged. "He's a teenager. Hormones. Don't overthink it." "That's not what I mean. It's the way he looks at me sometimes. And, the other day in the kitchen." He cut me off. "Rachel, he's just a boy. Don't flatter yourself." Froze. That sting in his voice, that brush off. It felt so foreign coming from him. That night I couldn't sleep. Not because of Tyler, but because of David's words. Why didn't he want to talk about it? Why didn't he care? Over the following weeks, things escalated in subtle but undeniable ways. One evening, David was supposed to meet a client for dinner. I was home alone, reading on the porch. Tyler came out, pulled up a chair beside me, and without asking, reached over to fix a loose strand of hair behind my ear. I immediately stood up and told him it was inappropriate. He apologized, clearly embarrassed, and walked off. I locked myself in my room that night. When David returned, I expected him to ask about my mood, but again, nothing. It was as if he didn't want to see what was right in front of him. Or worse, he saw and didn't care. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a stormy evening. Rain fell in thick sheets outside. David and I were watching a movie in the living room. Tyler was upstairs, or so I thought. The lights flickered a few times from the storm, and I went to the kitchen to light a candle just in case. As I reached up into the cabinet, I felt someone behind me again. I froze, expecting David. But it was Tyler. He whispered, "You shouldn't pretend you don't notice me. I notice you. All the time." Before I could respond, before I could even process the shock, David's voice rang out from behind us. "Tyler, go to your room." I turned, my heart racing. David stood there, completely calm. No anger, no shock, just cold stillness. Tyler lowered his eyes and walked away without another word. I turned to David, desperate for him to say something, anything. But he said nothing. He just walked past me, sat down on the couch, and resumed watching the movie. I sat next to him in disbelief. "Did you hear what he said? You saw that, right?" He nodded slowly. "I did." "Then why aren't you angry? Why aren't you doing something?" He looked at me for a long moment, then said, "Because if I react, I'll break something that's already fragile." He's confused. I'd rather not make it worse. That answer made no sense to me. That was the night I realized how deep David's passivity ran. He wasn't protecting Tyler. He was avoiding discomfort. And he certainly wasn't protecting me. Felt exposed, betrayed, alone. From that moment, I began to distance myself emotionally. I avoided being alone in the same room with Tyler. I made sure our interactions were brief and always in public areas of the house. I no longer stayed up late. I didn't wear anything too revealing, not even around the house. I was walking on eggshells in my own home, and my husband, my partner, was silent through it all. When the summer ended and Tyler returned to his mother's house, I breathed for the first time in months. I thought maybe things would return to normal. But they didn't. David and I barely spoke. There was an emotional canyon between us that no words could cross. I started going out more, spending time with friends, rebuilding the parts of myself that had gone numb over the months. Then one afternoon, as I was walking back from a local bookstore, I saw Tyler standing outside. He had come back earlier than expected. No call. No warning. I told him he couldn't stay. Not without David there. I asked him to wait outside until I called his father. He looked disappointed, but he didn't argue. That night, David came home and asked why I was being so cold. "I'm not cold," I said quietly. "I'm just done pretending that nothing happened." He didn't reply. He didn't fight for us. He just walked away. That was the moment I decided to reclaim my peace. A month later, I moved out. I didn't leave with anger or bitterness. I left with clarity. I wasn't going to live in a house where I felt unsafe and unsupported. I now live in a small apartment downtown. Quiet. Peaceful. I've started writing again. I've started smiling again. Sometimes people ask me what ended my marriage. I don't always know how to explain it. But the truth is, it wasn't Tyler. It was David's silence. His refusal to acknowledge what was right in front of him. His choice to let things slide rather than confront the uncomfortable.